This is New Zealand, the second most peaceful country in the world, located in the very south of the Pacific Ocean, about 4,000 kilometers away from Australia. New Zealand is very famous in the world, especially for its large mountain ranges, beautiful landscapes, and high quality organic food. Now, some of you might already know that the famous movie Lord of the Rings was also shot in these beautiful valleys of New Zealand. The weather of New Zealand is exactly like that of the UK. Mild summers, long winters, and good rainfall, but despite this, New Zealand's population is not even 70% of UK's population. If you look at this map of New Zealand, you will see that around 80% of New Zealand is completely empty and no one lives there. 70% of New Zealand's population lives in the north, and 50% of the north's population also lives in this one city, Auckland. Despite such a wonderful weather, beautiful scenery, local remembrance, and high standard of living, why is 80% of New Zealand empty? Today we will know the answer to this question. First of all, if we look at the world map, you will notice that New Zealand is very far from the rest of the world. Meaning if you board a plane from Karachi or Mumbai, then you can reach New Zealand only after crossing the entire Arabian Sea and Indian Ocean in a flight of about 18 to 22 hours. Now the question arises that how did man reach this island so far from the world? Now there are multiple views here. If we go to the official website of New Zealand, it is written there that 1,000 years ago, between 1320 and 1350, the Maori people discovered New Zealand. Maori were the people living on these islands of the Pacific Ocean, which are also called Polynesian Islands. According to official sources, Maori left their dependent islands in the 13th century and boarded large boats to New Zealand. This was almost the same time when Mongols and Cham Khan were taking control of the whole of Eurasia. But now the question arises that why did these people leave their old islands and come to New Zealand? To find out the answer to this question, we found out from some articles that there is a slight difference in the historical records of Maori. According to Maori tradition, New Zealand was not discovered in the 13th century, but 500 years before that, around 758, by a Maori named Kupe. Kupe was a fisherman who used to catch fish for himself and his earnings. Then it started happening that whenever he used to fish, his fish would be eaten by the octopuses found in the area, and these people would not get anything. Now, since the main food source of these people was fish, a lot of problems started getting created. The solution was that Kupe and some of his companions would go to the sea and try to find another island where there was a good supply of food and water. This search, Kupe landed in the Pacific Ocean with 20 to 25 people. After a few days of travel, they saw an island with big mountains. This was New Zealand, an island rich in seafood, sheep and fruits on which there was no other human being. This was the perfect place for Kupe and his tribe. The novel sent some of his companions back to the political islands so that they could inform the rest about this island. In this way, the Maori people started settling in New Zealand. In the 17th century, the Maori people lived peacefully in New Zealand, and due to being away from the world, they neither had any enmity with anyone nor was there any threat from anyone. But all this was going to change very soon. This was the time when Western nations were expanding their power all over the world. Explorers were being sent to discover Irish countries and continents which European countries could capture to increase their power. In this connection, a British explorer, Ebelsman, went in search of a continent in the south of the Pacific Ocean because at that time, the Europeans thought that there must be a continent in this part, and if it does exist, it will open the doors of many opportunities for European countries. This man discovered New Zealand in 1642. But when he tried to land there, he had a bloody fight with the Maori people and was forced to flee. Then in 1769, the British officer James Cook reached New Zealand in search of this continent. Once again, there was a fierce fight between James's soldiers and the Maori people, and many Maori soldiers were also killed in it. James had to go back, but this time he made a detailed map of New Zealand and the entire journey. Through this map, Europeans again started reaching Ireland in the 18th century, and this time they dealt with the Maori people in a very smart way. By luring them with trade and profit, the British started building their naval ports there, and then after 100 years, the British took complete control of New Zealand. A treaty was signed between the British and the Maori people in 1840, which is called the Treaty of Whanganui. And after this treaty, New Zealand officially became a part of the European and British Empire. At that time, the population of the Maori people was around 200,000. But in the next 100 years, instead of increasing, this population decreased from 200,000 to 40,000, and there were two main reasons for this. Actually, when the Europeans came here, those diseases also came here, which were common in Europe at that time. The problem was that the Maori people had not developed immunity to these diseases, and that is why after European immigration, the local Maori people started getting sick and dying. Secondly, in the 19th century, New Zealand had become a very violent place. Just 5 years after the Treaty of Whanganui, a series of wars broke out between the British and local Maori over land ownership. This continued for the next 40 years. Many local Maori were killed in these wars, and finally this whole series stopped in 1881, when all the big leaders of Maori were killed and Maori movement was badly defeated. Now the Britishers also understood that without including local people in the development process, it is not possible to move forward, and that is why immediately after these wars, the British government made the locals the key holders in every development project, right from the electoral process. This way, the journey of peace and progress finally started in New Zealand, but still, as we showed you in the beginning of the video today, why is so much area of New Zealand empty, and why do all the people live here in Northern Ireland? Actually, this southern region of New Zealand is completely empty because it is almost impossible to live or construct on this entire area. There are mountain ranges all around in the southern part of New Zealand. There are high mountains all around in this entire area, and the land is so uneven, it is almost impossible to even build basic infrastructure like roads, etc. This eastern side land on this side of the mountains is very barren and infertile, because of which there is no power for irrigation, etc. Here, that is why the majority of New Zealand's population lives here in Northern Ireland. To solve this problem of population shortage, New Zealand government relaxed the immigration policy after World War II. Before World War II, entry of non-white people was not allowed in New Zealand. Due to this, the population of New Zealand remained stagnant till 1950. After that, when this restriction was lifted, people from Asia, especially China, Philippines and India started coming and settling here, and finally the much needed boom started coming in the population of New Zealand. Today, the total 27% of New Zealand's population are immigrants or those people who came from outside New Zealand. The majority of immigrants live here in Auckland and its surrounding areas. This is the reason why Auckland is one of the least affordable cities in the world today. Because land supply is less and demand for housing is high. To solve this problem, the New Zealand government is now giving people a grant of up to $8,000 so that they shift to Waikato, 100 km away from Auckland, so that the pressure on Auckland's housing market is reduced and prices normalize. Very interesting thing is that New Zealand's entire agriculture industry runs on exporting animal meat. Here in Northern Ireland, there is such lush green land due to rain, due to which countless sheep, goats and cows are found here. The population of New Zealand is around 5 million. Whereas according to an estimate, the population of sheep and goats here is almost 30 million. That is why New Zealand is the country that exports the most mutton and sheep wool in the world. 95% of New Zealand's meat is exported abroad, and in 2019, New Zealand earned a revenue of $46 billion from this export. New Zealand is the 50th largest economy in the world, and the main source of revenue of this economy is agricultural export. Earning $46 billion only from the export of meat is an unbelievable thing. If you liked today's video, then like it and subscribe to the channel. These are all the sources from which we have taken suggestions for this video. See you in the next video. Till then, take care of yourself.